On the edge of the war-torn world of Nareth, where the red skies burned with the light of distant suns and the air smelled of scorched metal, soldiers of two opposing factions clashed in endless waves. Among them, a human named Kale moved with a strange calm, his armor scratched and scorched, his face streaked with soot, yet his eyes burned with unwavering resolve. He had come to this planet not to conquer or pillage, but because the human coalition had received distress signals from the enemy's territory, a place forbidden by the war code, yet impossible to ignore now it was there. In the shattered ruins of what had once been a thriving city, that Kale saw her a small child, no older than 7, trembling amidst the debris, surrounded by the chaos of battle. Her people had always been considered the enemy, yet she looked at Kale not with fear, but with a fragile hope. The moment was fleeting. A blade, glinting with deadly energy, shot toward her from a hidden assailant. Without hesitation, Kale threw himself in the child's path, taking the blow across his shoulder. Pain seared through him, white-hot and unrelenting, but his arms tightened around the girl. She screamed, but the sound was muffled by the thunder of nearby explosions. Kale gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. He could feel the life draining from him, yet his mind focused solely on the child. Every instinct, every ounce of training, was devoted to keeping her safe. Slowly, carefully, he dragged her toward the remains of a wall, using it as cover from the ongoing skirmishes. Around them, soldiers screamed, machines fired, and the world seemed to collapse into fire and smoke, yet in that small pocket of survival, Kale shielded the child like a living wall. The child's mother arrived moments later, her armor torn, her weapons smoking from the battle she had waged to reach her daughter. She had witnessed the entire scene from a distance, unable to intervene because of her own injuries, yet when she saw Kale, her expression shifted from shock to disbelief. This human, the one she had been trained to consider an enemy, had risked everything his life to save her child. Her first instinct was disbelief. Her next was gratitude. But as she approached, she saw the blood staining Kale's armor and realized the depth of his sacrifice. "No," she cried, dropping to her knees beside him. Her hands hovered over the wound, trembling. She had spent her life defending her child, fighting enemies who would show no mercy, yet here was a human who had acted with more courage than most she had ever known. Kale's breathing was labored, but he managed a faint smile. "She's safe," he whispered, his voice strained yet firm. The battlefield around them continued to rage, yet the mother's focus narrowed to this single human. With a determination that startled even herself, she lifted him onto her shoulders, moving swiftly through the debris. He protested weakly, but her strength, fueled by desperation and gratitude, carried them both out of immediate danger. Once they were behind the relative safety of a collapsed structure, she finally allowed herself to examine the wound. The energy blade had cut deep, leaving a gash that would have been fatal if untreated. She activated a field medic device, scanning him, stabilizing him, and infusing him with a regenerative serum that was only used in emergencies. As the device worked, Kale's eyes fluttered closed, but he felt the warmth of the serum spreading through him and the gentle, unyielding care of someone who would not let him die. The child, still clutching his hand, looked up at her mother and whispered, "He saved me." The mother's eyes softened, though they were still sharp with the instincts of a warrior. "Yes," she said, her voice almost reverent. "And now you belong to me." Kale stirred at her words, confusion mingling with pain. "Belong?" he asked faintly. "In my world," she explained, "the one who saves a child, the one who sacrifices without thought, earns a bond. You have proven yourself worthy. You are no longer just a human. You are ours." The child nestled against his chest, safe now, and Kale felt something he had never known, a connection that transcended bloodlines, species, and the hatred of war. He had acted out of instinct, out of compassion, yet the recognition of his bravery bound him in ways he could not have foreseen. The mother's gaze remained fixed on him, not with fear or suspicion, but with respect and a quiet demand that he accept this new role. Days passed. The battlefield quieted, leaving behind only the echoes of conflict and the smell of smoldering metal. Cale's injuries healed, thanks to the mother's careful attention, yet his spirit was forever changed. He had once believed that war defined people, that enmity and allegiance dictated worth. But now he understood that courage, mercy, and the willingness to protect those weaker than oneself were what truly mattered. The mother, a leader among her people, began to include him in her councils. He was not a soldier under her command, nor a guest among her people. He was something more. His opinions were sought, his judgment respected, and his presence became a symbol. Where once humans and her people had met only in hostility, now there was the seed of trust. Built on the courage of one individual, the child grew closer to Cale, and he to her, forming a bond of trust that no war could sever. In moments of quiet, he would teach her the ways of his world, the art of movement, the strategies of thinking ahead, the small joys of curiosity. She, in turn, showed him the resilience of hers, the strength to endure, the patience to understand, and the capacity to forgive even those who had once been enemies. Eventually, Cale learned that the bond the mother had claimed was not a trivial title or a simple acknowledgement of bravery. It was an honor, a responsibility, and a recognition of humanity itself. He was now a living testament to the ideals that his species aspired to, yet often failed to uphold: selflessness, courage, and the willingness to act when others would hesitate. In her eyes, he had become more than a human. He was a bridge between worlds. Months later, the mother stood before the leaders of her people, Cale at her side. She recounted the battle, the moment he had thrown himself to protect her child, and the bravery he had displayed when faced with certain death. The assembly was silent, and when she concluded, she declared that Cale would be honored, not as a visitor, not as a mercenary, but as one of them. The title was formalized, a recognition of his humanity elevated by his actions, and the assembly erupted in a rare moment of unified approval. Cale looked at the child, now laughing and playing amidst the ruins that had once been a battlefield. He felt a profound sense of purpose. His life had been defined by ordinary choices, by the mundane routines of a human soldier, but now every decision, every risk, every act of compassion had led to this moment. He had saved a child, yes, but in doing so, he had reshaped the perception of an entire people. They now saw humans not as invaders or enemies, but as beings capable of great honor and heroism. The mother approached him afterward, her eyes unwavering. "You have shown them what we all hope to believe, that even in the darkest moments, courage and compassion can define a being more than war or hatred ever could. You are our Cale, and through you, perhaps the future of our worlds can be different." Cale nodded, feeling the weight and honor of her words. He had acted without thought of reward or recognition, yet the bond he now shared with the child and her mother was more valuable than any medal or title he could have earned. In saving one life, he had changed countless others, and in the eyes of this alien world, he had proven the enduring truth of humanity, that even against overwhelming odds, the human spirit could shine with unparalleled brilliance. The war continued around them, yet the child's laughter echoed through the ruins, a reminder that hope could endure even in the shadow of conflict. Cale, now a living symbol of this hope, stood ready not as a soldier of one nation, but as a testament to the best of his species, a bridge between worlds, and a guardian bound not by obligation, but by the enduring power of compassion and courage. in the quiet moments that followed. He realized that the title the mother had given him was not a claim, but a promise that one life, one act of bravery, could ripple outward, reshaping the future in ways unimaginable. And Kale, the human who had taken the blow to save a child, understood that he would honor that promise for the rest of his days. The bond forged in fire and blood, amidst the echoes of war, endured. He was no longer simply a human soldier. He was a hero, recognized and embraced by those who had once called him enemy. And through that recognition, he had achieved something greater than victory in battle. He had earned a place in a world that once seemed forever hostile, proving that the essence of humanity could illuminate even the darkest corners of the cosmos.